All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about what the Falcons did, and that is taking Michael Penix with their first pick. And he ended up getting taken before J.J. McCarthy. And J.J. McCarthy, we were hearing, the Vikings ended up getting him. But you heard, the Giants could be in on him. The Vikings could trade up, into, the top five maybe and getting him. But J.J. McCarthy ended up being taken after Michael Penix because you had Caleb Williams, you had Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and then Michael Penix ended up getting taken. And early on you heard, Michael Penix, he's a guy that's going to be taken, could possibly be like a second round pick. But then recently you were hearing that he was making his way up the draft boards, and it was funny because where I was last night watching the draft, they had Adam Schefter come on, and he said that the Falcons are likely to take a quarterback with this pick. And I was confused by that because you just gave Kirk Cousins $180 million, $100 million guaranteed, a 4-year contract. Why are you taking a quarterback at that spot? Now, if you were to take him, if he was still available and in the second round and you wanted to take him in the second round, or that way, I feel like that would make more sense. But they took him with their first selection. And apparently, Kirk Cousins was not aware of this, or his agent. This just happened. And again, when I mentioned this in the first segment, it was funny. They had a video on Twitter where it's the Falcons draft room, and Arthur Blank is having a conversation with the general manager, and it looks like the general manager is trying to explain why the Falcons made that pick. And that does not look good for that guy. Because you have that, and on top of that, Kirk Cousins was not aware of this. Now, can Michael Penix be a good quarterback? Again, I don't know. I know there's people that do like Michael Penix, but he's got an injury history himself. And when Kirk Cousins' contract is up, Michael Penix is going to be 28 years old. So I guess they have Michael Penix because again, Kirk Cousins is older. He's 35. So, he was 35 when he signed the contract, I believe. So, it's 35, 36. Regardless, when his contract is up, he's going to be close to 40 years old. That's where he's going to be. Actually, we'll look up how old Kirk Cousins is right now because I know he was 35. I don't know if his birthday passed. But regardless, this was a very interesting pick, and the Falcons are getting blasted for it. Okay, so his birthday's in August. So when he plays next year for the Falcons, he's going to be 36 years old. So, it's not looking good for Falcons fans right now. At least the way they some of them are reacting to it. Because the Falcons had other needs. The defense, that most people had them taking Dallas Turner, who actually the Vikings ended up getting too. Right? The Vikings drafted him. So he ends up going to Minnesota instead. So I'm not really a fan of that pick. I mean, I understand it, but it definitely, from the way people are reacting to it, it was a reach on the Falcons' part. And on top of that, when you have the video of Arthur Blank and the general manager talking about the pick, and it's not good. So, and again, because Arthur Blank, they gave Kirk Cousins this big contract, and then you go and you draft a quarterback with your first pick. Like that. You got other needs, and again, the Falcons are going to be a good team, I think. Now, I don't look at them as one of the best teams in the NFC, but I think they're going to be an improved team. They're going to be a team that's going to be fighting for the NFC South, and I think I think right now you could look at them as the best team in the NFC South because you got the Saints and the inconsistencies with them last year. Again, they finished the season strong, but now it's a different year. And the Buccaneers, again, they're going to be competitive. I think right now I look at the Buccaneers and the Falcons as the top two. And then you got the Saints. But, again, you want to help out Kirk Cousins. You don't want to be... I know, like, if they took Michael Penix, again, in a later round, if he was still there, then I get it. But maybe they just felt that... Because, the Raiders, I saw that they really liked Penix, so maybe they would have took him. But I don't know. For the Falcons, quarterback was not a need. There's other areas that you needed to address, and they didn't do that. They ended up taking another quarterback. And again, this is, and I know other people have said this is not a knock on Michael Penix, but the Falcons had other areas that they had to address. Like every mock draft that I was seeing, it was Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama, going to them, and that just ended up not happening. It's not like they took like an offensive lineman or maybe even a receiver. They took a quarterback. That's not going to help Kirk Cousins in 2024. This is a move that's made for down the line, but again, there's other areas that they needed to improve on. And the fact that Cousins got blindsided by this, I mean, that's on the Falcons. That's miscommunication on their part. Unless they didn't want him to know. I don't know. But I mean, and you got this, and then on top of the stuff going on with the tampering, because Kirk Cousins said something at his press conference that he wasn't supposed to say, but that came out, and now the Falcons are in a little bit of hot water with that. So it's it hasn't been a good couple weeks for the Falcons fan base. And again, can Michael Penix end up being the franchise guy because he's not going to start immediately? I mean, we'll see, but that wasn't the right pick there for the Falcons. They had other needs that they had to address, and they didn't do that. They did not do that. So, I mean, we'll see how this all unfolds. But Kirk Cousins is the starter. That's what it's going to be going forward. So I don't really know what else to say on this, but it was definitely a shock. It was definitely a shock. Because again, J.J. McCarthy was still on the board. And he ended up being the quarterback taken after that. And then Bo Nix got taken by the Broncos. But yeah, pretty much, I mean, I think that's all the big names at quarterback that got taken. But maybe the teams that took the quarterbacks later, like the first three were not reaches. Like we knew that was going to be the first three. I know the Patriots were saying, "Oh well, we could, maybe we're open for business," but that never ended up happening. The Cardinals, they stayed at 4. Chargers stayed at 5. We'll talk about what they did in the next segment. But yeah, it's just there wasn't really any big trades. Like nobody really like traded up significantly to get who they wanted. Everybody pretty much. I mean, the Vikings, ended up trading with the Jets to move up, but other than that, there really wasn't. Later on in the draft, a couple of teams that go at it in the postseason every season, they made a trade. The Chiefs traded up with the Bills. So we'll get into that. But again, that's all going to be in the next segment. I don't want to, bring that over here. So, we'll again, it was an interesting pick, and we'll see what ends up happening. But the video of Arthur Blank, he did not look too thrilled about that. So, but again, I mean, it's not a knock on Michael Penix at all. But I think the Falcons, they had other needs, and they decided to do that. And again, it's coming off of giving another quarterback a big contract. Like, if the Falcons wanted to start fresh, then and they took Penix there, okay. And you signed like a veteran quarterback to kind of be if you signed like a Marcus Mariota or a Sam Darnold. I mean, they had Mariota already. But, if you signed one of those guys, like the Vikings did, like the Commanders did, they brought Mariota in, and you want to have, Penix sit behind one of those guys, okay, because then, you're not giving that quarterback $180 million and $100 million guaranteed, especially when that quarterback is coming off of a significant injury. Like, if you wanted to go that route, okay. But when you give a quarterback that much money, and then in the same offseason, you draft a quarterback with the 7th pick, and you're trying to be a competitive team in 2024, which they will be. It's that wasn't the right way to go about it. Because again, if Penix fell, and you ended up taking him in a later round, okay, then that makes sense. Or if you wanted to take another quarterback, again, the big names are off the board now. But that doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be the only quarterbacks that are taken in this draft. But if you wanted to take a quarterback in the later rounds and draft one, then okay. But I mean, again, I'm not a GM, so I could say this. I mean, that's just my opinion, but others could be different. But I don't know. I feel like that makes sense, right? You don't pay a quarterback all that money and then you take a quarterback when you have a top 10 pick. Why are you doing that? And like I said, you got Kirk Cousins coming off of a significant injury. Michael Penix has an injury history himself. So if Kirk Cousins gets hurt, Michael Penix gets hurt, well, what happens? What happens after that? But they must have really liked Michael Penix. So that's why they drafted him. But that was again an interesting move. But let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know in the comments. So when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the rest of the picks from the first round. I'll go through the draft grades from an article on Bleacher Report. But before I do that, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is GSMCPodcast.net. Again, that really helps the show. Makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. And as always, is displayed on the ticker at the bottom of the show segment down below. So, like I said, when we come back, we will go over the rest of the picks from the first round. I'll give you my thoughts on them and the draft grades that they were given as well. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.